It's time now to get to the business news with Nicholas Poynton. Nicholas, Mike Perot, the sort of real estate guy, is delving into other things.
Yeah, probably best known for Mike Perot Mortgages. Earlier this year we saw reports that he's exited that business, although the company still does bear his name, to turn his attention to the skies, but probably in particular the Cook Islands, really, because today he put out a press release outlining his plan to launch a new airline known as Pacifica Air, which will fly direct routes to Rarotonga from Wellington and Christchurch. And this has been in the works for some time that we've heard in the past. He's been a big advocate for one of these Cook Islands travel bubbles, and when that was announced last week, this is why we're seeing this story today. And the airline is waiting for approval from the Civil Aviation Authority, but once it does get that green light, it will commence 3 flights a week from June. And I spoke to Mike today, and he told me that right now is actually the best time to launch an airline. He's saying that because of the disruption and the downturn in the industry, it means entry into the market is actually really cheap. He says the terms, to lease a plane, so they're going to lease 2 planes. It's actually never been cheaper to lease 2 planes. He says aviation fuel is cheaper. And what we're seeing in the aviation industry is lots of international airlines actually shrink their operation. The great piece of jargon they use is they talk about right-sizing their operations. So a lot of airlines are focusing...
That is a special piece of jargon, right-sizing.
A lot of airlines are talking about focusing on their domestic operations, and he believes that this means there'll be less competition in the international market. He believes there is demand for overseas travel, and his airline, which will give people direct access to the Cook Islands, is going to be a winner. He says currently if you live in the South Island, you have to take 2 flights to get there. With his airline, you'll be able to just fly there direct. And I see you making a bit of a face there.
No, I'm just really curious. So he says the planes are going to be the cheapest that they could be to lease. So what about staff, pilots and what have you? Obviously there was a lot of layoffs. Has he mentioned where he's getting those people from?
Great question, yes. So I asked him about this, and he didn't really want to say. He talked about how they've got experience on their side, but I asked him, look, there's been an exodus of senior executives, of plenty of staff from Air New Zealand, but he sort of refused to comment about where those people would be coming from. Okay. He said they'll be giving more details and announcements in the new year. But I also put to him that this country has been a graveyard for small airlines over the years who've said that they're going to come to this country, they're going to enter the market, they're going to shake things up. And but when I asked him, what are you going to do differently? And he says, for starters, they're going to do what they didn't. And he says that this company is going to be well capitalised. They have the experience. Their timing for entry into the market couldn't be better. They have the aircraft available. And look, this is going to be a really exciting space to see how this materialises once they get that green light, because a lot of this, what they're gambling on, is that there's going to be significant demand from New Zealanders to go to the Cook Islands. So let's just see if that really plays out in the end.
One to watch. Quickly, can we talk about the services sector and activity in there running into congestion?
Yeah, the services sector slipped back into contraction for the first time in 6 months, really. It's the lowest that activity has been. Got the latest read off the sector from the BNZ Bank. It shows that, like I mentioned before, yes, the whole sector is actually in contraction, and the reason why we've seen a bit of a real step backwards from October to November is weak sales, supply chain challenges and falling stocks. But it's really those supply chain challenges that have been the real kicker, a real pain point for the industry. That sub-index was in its 30s, which is deep in contraction territory, and it's the small firms that are struggling the most to get their small goods into the country, to get those products in the door so they can actually sell them to people. One of the other things that's probably a bit concerning, and this has been a real lingering problem in the sector, is that employment intentions have been weak. The indicators have been showing that jobs have been shed in the sector for the past 9 consecutive months. And look, when I spoke to the bank's senior economist, I said, what's going to turn this around? And he said, there's no real silver bullet with those closed borders, the loss of international tourism. It's not just the foreign money coming into this country, it's also the foreign workers, backpackers who come into this country, work in bars and cafes or take retail jobs for sort of extended periods at a time. And unfortunately, with the summer coming up, these issues are really going to be magnified. So sort of a down note to finish on, but hopefully we can see some pickup or some tailwinds in the new year.
Let's take a quick gallop around the markets.
Well, yeah, worth mentioning that opening of trading today was delayed by tech glitches. The market finally opened at 11:30, and the NZX finished down 84 points to 12,835. Our dollar is at 70.8 US cents, 94 Australian and 53.2 British pence.
Thanks, Nicholas. Nicholas Poynton there with Business.